Okay, so welcome everyone, and we are very happy to have you with us for our session. They just don't get it, fixing the executive disconnect with Stuart Easton. Thank you all for joining the PMI Germany chapter and the local group Darmstadt community. And it's always a pleasure to see familiar faces returning and new participants joining our conversation from across different countries, industries, and experiences. Today, we will talk about a challenge many companies face, the gap between executives and the PMO. Project teams often focus on processes, governance, and delivery, while executives care more about business results, risks, and strategic value. And because of this difference, communication can fail, opportunities can be missed, and project may not deliver the expected value. And in this session, we will discuss how PMOs can communicate in a way that executives understand better, and how to show the business value of the PMO, and how to become a trusted partner for the CEO, COO, and CFO. As always, with our session, the goal is not just to learn something new, but also to spark reflection and conversation within our community. First, I will tell something about our agenda. In first 10 minutes, we will begin with a short overview of the suggested conduct. Then we will present PMI Germany chapter, local group Darmstadt, and introduce our today's speaker. After that, 1 hour and 10 minutes are reserved for Stuart's session. And last 10 minutes, we will kindly ask you to provide us feedback. We will provide information about next events, and we'll give you PDU code. Please, during this session, mute your microphone. Use your full name to help us identify your PDUs. Feel free to turn on your video if you like. Use the chat window to ask questions, comment, or share your LinkedIn link for networking. You're also welcome to contact the speakers directly with any follow-up question. And this session will be recorded, and recorded is only allowed to organizers. Now I will say something about PMI Germany chapter that is founded in 2020 through the merger of 3 former chapters. And our chapter now spans 5 regions and more than 25 local groups. We are proud to present a dynamic community of approximately 11,000 PMI members across Germany, coming from 43 different countries, and nearly 5,000 of those are part of our Germany's diverse and international network. Our work is powered by a dedicated team of over 150 volunteers who bring energy, expertise, and passion to everything we do. Together, we are committed to supporting the project management profession by empowering leaders, facilitating continuous learning, creating spaces for connection and collaboration, and by driving social impact through projects and local initiatives. Now, let me tell you a bit who we are. Local group Darmstadt is the English-speaking community, a community built by volunteers from 6 different countries. We host 2 free online events every month, open to all. And once a month, we have a roundtable in Darmstadt. Since we started, over 3,300 people have joined our events, and more than 110 of them have shown such commitment. They attended 10 or more sessions, and that's a true sign of impact. We also keep the conversation going on LinkedIn, where our community of more than 520 members continues to grow and support one another. Now, behind all of this is a team of volunteers, Dr. Thomas Valenta, who is joining us from Bad Kreuznach in Germany, our team lead, Florian Adrian from France, based in Darmstadt. Then Mohammed Razai, originally from Afghanistan. He's also based in Darmstadt. Tofik Habli, he's contributing all the way from Beirut, Lebanon. Ola Stefanovska, she's joining from Stuttgart, originally from North Macedonia. Maria Robi, she's based in Brussels, originally from North Macedonia, and myself, Almira Hasanovic, I'm based in Bittelborn and originally from Montenegro. Now it's time to turn our attention to what we are all here for. And it's really a great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Stuart Easton. He's expertise in project prioritization, benefits realization, strategy execution, and portfolio management. He has more than 20 years experience in portfolio management and decision science. He's also a guest lecturer at Oxford University and USC. Impact helps organizations move beyond on time, on budget to measurable business value. Approach evidence-based prioritization and governance aligned with strategy, and results improve ROI, faster planning cycles, and strong executive trust. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Stuart Easton, who will guide us through today's session. And Stuart, now the stage is yours.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Gosh, that makes me sound very old when we start talking about over 20 years doing this and so on. So anyway, great to see so many people here today. Thank you for taking some time. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about the gap between execs and the project delivery teams, and PMOs in particular we'll touch on. And this is when I speak at conferences, and I speak at quite a lot of conferences, the most common question I'm asked is, how do I get my execs to pay attention? Right? How do I get them to care about what I do? How do I get them to support what I do? And so we're going to explore some of that today. And now I just want to ask as many of you as possible to turn on your cameras if you're comfortable doing so. When you're doing these sessions, it can be really difficult to gauge the speed and the pace without feedback. So on my screen here, I've got as many beautiful faces as are sharing their screens, sharing their image, but it really helps me judge whether I need to be going quicker or slower. If any of you are in the bath, please don't turn your cameras on, even though I do have quite a lot of rubber ducks up here behind me. That's probably still not appropriate. So let's move on. Now we're going to use chat quite a bit today. So we already started, and I have chat open on this window over here to my right as well. So the question I asked at the beginning was, what do you think your executives think about you? And you being kind of the project delivery organization for the most part on this particular call. And I talk to executives around the world all the time. And we've got some people on here who are obviously doing an excellent job because they're getting support from their execs, and their execs seem to really appreciate them. And I'm delighted about that. But that's not the case for most project delivery teams. And most PMOs in particular. I like the comment about, who was it that made the comment? If we went away, not sure they'd notice, wherever that was. That was a great comment. And that's the kind of thing that I hear all the time. So that's what we're going to try and fix. Now, of course, there's no silver bullet. There's not one fix for this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to split the session into kind of two themes, right? So to get your execs to pay attention, there are really two things that you need to do. You need to be able to communicate with them, and then you need to deliver results. That's it, right? If you do those two things, then you will have their attention and they will support you, and you will be able to support them more effectively. So we're going to do that. We're going to split the session into these two. So we're going to start off with a little bit of homework. I want you to imagine that you just got a new boss, or better yet, your boss's boss, or better yet, your boss's boss's boss is new, and they called you into their office, and they've said, what do you do? Okay, so just in 5, 10 words, drop in the chat. What do you do? What's your job? What do you do? Okay. See, Andreas is being honest here. I like that. Thank you, Andreas. That's a good one. Any more? Let's see if we can get a few more in there. Whatever you ask, okay? Make sure projects are successful. I like that. Love it. Enrico, I love your comments. And we may use that as a model a little bit later on. Um, there we go. Peter, that's what I was expecting. That kind of an answer. Yeah, brilliant. Love it. So, same thing now. Now tell them about a key project. Just think about a key project that you're working on, right? And same person, same boss, they've just asked you, well, tell me about that project, right? 10 words or less. How are you going to describe that project to them? So just think about a project that you're working on now or you worked on recently. You don't need to put this one in chat, by the way, because some of these might be sensitive, right? But just sort of write down the words that you would put, 10 words or less to describe a project that you're working on right now or you recently worked on. And we're going to come back to the words that you've just written down in a few minutes. All right, so if PMOs are coming up to me and asking, Stuart, how do we get the exec's attention? Right? What are the execs saying when I talk to executives? And I've got to say, executives typically, there are exceptions, of course, but typically when I talk to executives about projects and portfolios of projects, they want to know, why do projects take too long? They always take too long. They always cost too much. And they never seem to actually deliver the business result that I wanted. Right? Fundamentally, it comes down to that. That's their pain. And there are a few other things as well that we'll touch on later on. And it's not surprising, actually. So this is PMI data. The Pulse has stopped measuring this data each year. The PMI used to do a lovely job of measuring this every year. But these are project success rates. And so time along here, and this is the percentage. The top line are the ones supposedly successful. But this is the line I'm interested in for now. We could pick any of them, but I'm going to pick this one. This is the line of project failed, budget lost. Okay, this is total train wreck. Everything went wrong. We're done. Game over. Now, so let's think about this this for a second, right? That's about a third of projects ending in total failure around the world. A third of projects. So do any of you drive to work in the morning? Everybody works from home these days, but back in the days when we used to drive to work from home, this would be like leaving home, and a third of your journeys to work are ending up like this, right? Car's caught fire, it's burnt down, right? You're left at the side of the road, you don't get to work. Now, is there anybody here that would keep that car? Because I wouldn't, right? I'd get rid of that car. If that car was letting me down, 7 days out of every week, I'd get rid of it. And that's what executives are seeing. And in the last week and a half, I've had 3 conversations with PMO leaders where their PMO has been shut down, right? And because the executives are fundamentally just not seeing the value. It's something like 82%, if you believe the research, which I don't think I do, but if you believe the research, something like 82% of PMOs are being called into question by the leadership team. Right? That's terrifying. Um, Actually, Gwen, that's a super point. Let's go back to that. So Gwen says it's about the same number of failures as the PMI was talking about 30 years ago. Why isn't it better? What a great question. What a great question. We're going to touch on some of that later on. Um, and I want to pull one thing out here really strongly since Gwen mentioned it, which is that this is during a time because this is during a time when, as an industry, we've been spending something like last year, depending whose data you believe, globally, we spent between $5 and $8 billion, billion with a B, right? That's a lot of money. $5 and $8 billion on PPM tools. PMI revenue is somewhere in the mid 300s of millions of dollars. Okay, and most of that is on certifications, and there's training and conferences and all this stuff, all this money being spent on making sure our project managers are really good and supported with the right tools and methodologies and templates and everything else. But this number's not getting better. So why? We're going to look at that later on. If you remember, I said we're going to talk about language, how to communicate, and then we're going to talk about delivering results. So we'll come to that delivering results bit later on. But Gwen, I loved your observation there. And so it comes down to the fact that the executives just aren't getting the value that they want. And as we just said, what most project teams do is they focus then on, well, let's have more templates, more process, more reporting. And so eventually when you do this, you turn into the project police, right? And it's not about delivering value anymore. It's about, managing process and are we on scope and are we hitting, are we following the correct processes? So that's kind of scary to me. So I've got a quick question for you. There's how many people we've got? 36 people on this call. I would like you to drop into chat a quick yes if you're in project delivery. So who's in project delivery? We've got 37 people on the call. Let's see how many yeses we get. That's quite a lot of yeses. Few people can't find their keyboards. Yes, Prasad, we've been trained to follow the process. It's all Lee Lambert's fault. Anybody that knows Lee, we're going to blame Lee. Creating PMP, it's his fault. Lee's a good friend of mine, so I get to say things like that. I even have a Lee Lambert duck somewhere in my images. Excellent. All right, so we're all saying yes. We've got Arun saying hybrid. I'm going to say you're all wrong. Right? No, we're not in project delivery. From the executive's point of view, you're there to drive and to deliver my strategy. That's your job. Not to deliver projects. You're there to deliver my strategy. You're there to deliver the business goals that I'm trying to achieve. That's all strategy means, really, is I've got a set of goals and I want to achieve them. And so if you're not delivering on their strategy, then you're no use to them. Right? This is why there's a gap, because who was it who said it? Sorry, someone said we've been trained. Prasad. I love that comment. We've been trained to follow the process. That's right. As a profession, we have been trained to follow the process. Hurrah! Can we all have a quick hurrah? Lots of thumbs up and hearts, if you please, because last year, the PMI updated PMBOK finally, so that the definition of a successful project is a project that delivers value, not a project that delivers on time and on budget, but a project that delivers the business value that's useful to someone in the business who cares about it. How fantastic is that, right? It's taken, I don't know, I've been talking to senior people at the PMI for at least 10 years about that, trying to get that changed. So I'm delighted that's finally happened. And there's a bunch of people who've been advocating that for years. So this is all the execs care about, right? So why all the ducks? Well, because your projects are like ducks. Your executives really don't care about your projects. They don't care about your methodologies, your toolkits. They don't care about anything. Your templates, your earned value report, don't care about any of that. They don't care, in other words, if you have a boy duck or a girl duck. They just care about the egg, right? It's right there. It's in their name. They are executives, right? They care about the egg. They care about the value from the project, not about the project itself. So if we are talking about project stuff, right? If we're walking in saying, hi, we're the process police and we're here to help you, and then we start using, start talking about baseline variance and methodologies and Gantt charts, burn down, sprint and earned value, and 100 other terms that we love to use in the profession. What's the executive's response? Well, their executive's response is this, right? What are you talking about? I don't understand any of these words. And frankly, you're boring me, right? I'm bored by this. So I'm the CEO of a small company and I have this problem, right? So just the other day, I was talking to one of our guys about cyber and it's like, how are you getting on? We're doing a little bit of an upgrade on some of our cyber stuff. I'm like, how are you getting on? As a CEO, what I want to hear is we're doing well. We've got these 3 goals. We're 2/3 the way to hitting that one. I've got a bit of a roadblock on this goal over here, and I need you to do this to help me sort it. That's what I wanted. What I got was an endless stream of technical gibberish that I did not understand about all these different cybersecurity technicalities that I didn't understand and I frankly don't care about. That's his job to fix that. What I want to know is what's the business impact. So earlier on, I asked you to write down a description of a project that you worked on recently. And I'd be interested to see who wrote down door keys, right? Who started telling me about the duck? And who started telling me about the egg? So just quick in the chat, duck or egg? Did you use language that was about the duck, about the project, the outputs, the deliverables, the systems, the process? Or did you write something down about the egg, the value of that project? We've got, thank you, Lope. Thank you, Christian. I appreciate that. Lars is on the egg. Love it. Yeah, we've got a few ducks. Exactly. Yes, we are. We are the geese laying the golden eggs. I love it. Gottfried's got a little bit of egg on his face. Love that. Oh, brilliant. Love it. Okay, depends on the reception. Nice. Love it. All right. So, right, we're having a bit of fun. That's the point. But the goal of this is to really make you think about the language you're using, right? And the way you're communicating when you're talking to executives. I remember I was on stage, the PMI of Dubai flew me out there a couple of years ago, and we had, it was about 250 people in the room or something. We did a workshop. And I'm standing there, and Adil, who's the president of the PMI chapter in Dubai, sitting, and Adil's quite a serious fella. I don't know if any of you know Adil, but he's quite a serious guy, right? And he's sitting, and he's got his arms crossed, and he's sitting right at the front on the front table in this room with 250 people. And we got to the bit where I was talking about communicating with executives, and I said, okay, well, you're all PMI people. When you go to communicate with execs and tell them about your project, what I want you to go and do is go get your PMP training folder, right? And Adil's sitting there, he's going, yes, get your PMP training folder. And I said, pick it up and drop it in the bin, because you're not going to use any of that, right? You're not going to use any other language in that document, in that folder. And Adil's face just fell to the floor, right? But then he realized what I was saying is that, the language that we've been trained in, right, is the wrong language when you're talking to executives. Now, I can tell from the comments there are some of you who already know this, right, have figured this out. But if this group is like every other group I speak to, there's a lot of people here who speak nerdish to their executives. So here's a question then. If we're not going to speak nerdish, we're not going to speak projectese, what language might we use when we're talking to executives? And I'm going to change this question a little bit. It's not what language might you use. It's what language do they use? Because that's the language you should be using. Does that make sense? Right. So it's not about us at all. It's about them. At the end of the day, the executives are paying the bills. They own the goals of the organization. They own the strategy of the organization. And we are about delivering that strategy. That's our job. Okay. We do that through projects and everything else, but we're there to deliver the strategy. So we need to be talking the language of the person who's paying the bills. So what I would love you to do is just take, I love this. Look at this. This is super. You're a step ahead of me. So I would love you to jump into the chat and just start sharing some of the language that you think executives care about. Right? We've got business, we've got financial, the white and talk yolk. I love that. That's great. No one's ever said that before. That's a good one. Short, easy, clear figures. Okay, I like that. Let's just give it a minute or two. What are some of the things that they really care about? What's some of the language that executives love to talk about? Numbers. I like it. Does it align with my strategy? Yeah, I love that. Yeah, there we go. We're talking benefits, KPIs, some KPIs in there. Oh, I like the not go to jail one. That's a good one. That's a great one. I like that. Thank you again. Oh, it's Gwen again. Gwen again. That's good. That rhymes. Like it. Brief summary about performance. Yeah. Milestones, risks. Good. Actions for them. Christian, you nailed that one. That's brilliant. We've got managing expectations. That's an interesting one. Brilliant. Will this make or cost money? Fabulous. Now, there's a couple of ones in there I'm going to come back to actually. All right. So these are the kind of words that I hear from executives all the time, right? And I think you've kind of got most of those. So KPIs was in there, speed, alignment with strategy was absolutely, accountability, outcomes, growth is often a big one. Return on investment, right? This is now what the R on ROI is varies from company to company. And if you're a government agency, it's probably not even about money, right? Or if you're a charity, it's not about money at all, usually, or somewhat only in savings. So the R might be strategic contribution, brand growth, it might be market entry, it might be all sorts of things other than just money. But at the end of the day, executives think about what's the return on my investment. So somebody in the chat said something about time and cost. So here's an interesting question, right? How often do you walk into a meeting with executives with a really clear understanding of the benefits of your project and the times and the costs and how those interact? Because as an industry, we've been so trained that, it's got to be on time and on budget. We forget to ask the question, well, do you know what? If we brought this, if we actually, oh, camera's gone crazy. Well, let's try and recover. Hang on. If we spent a little bit more money and went over budget. And by doing that, if we could bring the project home and deliver the benefit a month earlier, would that be a good thing? Right? Because we're all project people, the assumption is that that's not a good thing, right? Because it's late, or rather it's over budget. But if we bring the project home early and that delivers $1 million extra value or something, well, we've gone $500,000 over budget, but we've added $1 million of extra value. That's worth doing. There's an ROI in that, right? How often have you had that discussion with your executives? Because that's what they want to hear. They want to have a discussion about that business impact. And if you walk in with those scenarios that say, hey guys, did you realize that, if we did this and we did this and we did this, we could deliver more value for the business? Then it's up to them to make a decision, but you are then helping them and you're demonstrating and showing that you are, what's the word I'm looking for? That you are engaged and supporting their goals, right? Not just blindly marching through execution. Now, I saw one or two people pulling faces when I said this is what your executives want to hear, right? And thank you for having your cameras on, those of you. Like I said, it really helps me gauge about speed and content and all that kind of good stuff. So do turn your cameras on if you're willing and able. So one of the challenges here is that executives have spent so long being disappointed that they kind of expect very often the project delivery teams to be disappointing. I'm not saying every project delivery team and organization is disappointing. And so sometimes what they do is they kind of, and it depends on the culture of the organization, the culture of the country you're in as well. But sometimes they start to treat you like the just a delivery organization, right? So just do your job. Stop talking to me. Stop making suggestions. And it's because they've been let down so often. Sometimes it's just that's the way they've been trained, right? But when you start to have these conversations with them, trust me, they want this kind of conversation. They may not be expecting it from you, right? But once you start having this conversation, they will start to think about you differently and treat you differently, and potentially even seek out your advice more often. So, quick yes, no, who actually feels like they have a strong understanding of the business language that their executives speak and what the issues are that their executives are wrestling with? Anybody? Drop just quick yes, no in chat for me, just so I can get a feel for, yeah, we've got a few yeses. I was expecting those people to say yes. Christian, thank you. Okay. So, so there's a little bit of a mixed bag. So how do you learn the language? There's a couple of things you can do. Go read the corporate strategy. That's usually a good place to start. See what the goals are in that strategy. But the technique that I always use is I go and talk to as many people in the business as I can. Right? Whether you have a project with them or not, whether you have direct interactions with them or not, I would go take them for coffee, sit down and ask them lots and lots and lots and lots of questions about what their goals are, what the barriers are to them achieving their goals, what the key risks in the business are, and really try to understand how the business works. And when you do that, you'll find that your language changes quite naturally, because you'll start thinking in that way, right? Super simple idea, But that's how I would recommend you go and begin the journey, right? So when you're interacting with executives, this is the language we should be using. As an executive, generally, one of the things I think is tremendously dangerous actually out there is the typical PPM tool, right? Can create such an incredibly rich set of data in a beautiful dashboard, right? So you've got loads and loads of data on this dashboard, and you show it to your executives. How much of that data do you think they understand? Do they have the context to interpret that data? Because if they don't, and the answer is they don't, um, they will just look at your dashboard and they'll look for the thing that's red and they'll ask you about that. Right? And that may or may not be the thing that you really need to talk to them about and that you need help and support with. But if you just give them data, lots of data, somebody earlier on said that, that one of the things they do is in their job is provide the data. I think you need to go beyond data and turn it into insight. Okay. So you're helping guide them to, there was somebody in the chat said that, they help identify key risks. Brilliant. Okay. So not every risk. Don't give them every risk, just the key ones and the ones that they need to take an action on, and then tell them what the action is and tell them what the options are and tell them the implications of those different options, right? Don't walk in there and say, I've got a problem, what should I do? No, execs don't want to hear that. They want to hear what part of what you're communicating to them is that you know what you're doing, right? So by speaking in executive language, by adding value and insight to the data, you are communicating that you know what you're doing. You're communicating in their language, which is about business outcomes and risks and resources and budget. They matter, but the outcomes, that's what really matters, right? It's all about the egg. All right. So communication wise, we're more or less done, right? It's actually remarkably simple. Go talk to a bunch of people, learn the language of your business, understand what the issues are in the business, the KPIs, and then communicate at that high level using this language, not the dorkies, projectees that we talked about earlier on. So the first part of this was about communicating. But to be seen as valuable, we actually have to add value to the business, right? And if you're the process police, many people will see you as the opposite. They'll see you as adding bureaucracy and process that isn't adding value to the business. Has anybody ever been accused of that? So if you're walking down the hallway and people are diving into the bathroom to avoid talking to you, that's a pretty good sign that they think you're the process police, right? You're not really adding a load of value. So do you remember her? Right? You're here to deliver my strategy. So here's a question. And by the way, when I talk to PMOs and I say, tell me a little bit about your strategy, the most common answer that I get to that is, what strategy? Okay, so there was a survey came out about a year and a half ago. 95% of employees don't understand the strategy of their organization. So my question to you, if you're in strategy execution, right, if your job is to deliver the strategy, do you understand the strategy? And my guess is you probably don't, because in my experience, even the leadership team doesn't really understand the strategy. By that, I mean, each person around the board table has a different interpretation of the strategy. The sales guy thinks selling stuff's most important. The manufacturing person thinks manufacturing stuff's the most important, right? So they sort of, there is no one picture of the strategy in most organizations, which is a whole challenge. And that's a whole other presentation that we can do at some point, is how to get them on board. So my question is to you, we don't need to jump into chat for this, but my question to you is, do you understand your corporate strategy, your business strategy, that at the end of the day, your projects are there to deliver. And vision and mission are great, but I don't think they're anywhere near the usual. Vision and mission are so vague, right? They don't really tell you what to do. They certainly don't tell you how you need to make decisions and allocate resources, which is the level of detail we need to understand it at, right? So to start that journey, one of the things that I would recommend you do is think about your organization. I've done an example. I was presenting a different deck to part of the NHS, the National Health Service here in the UK yesterday. So I'm using an ambulance example, right? So if you're an ambulance service, you have some top level goals, and they might be things like, what's the response time, safety, cost, quality of care. If I was a business, these might be revenue, market penetration, customer satisfaction, and business risk, right? Enterprise risk or something, right? But there are there are sort of big goals that your organization has. And then I want you to break those down and say, well, what are the things we need to be able to achieve to get to the big goal, right? So for example, if to really nail response time, we need to make sure that our average response time is going down, our maximum response time is not too long, and our call answer time is nice and short, right? So I'm starting to build goals around these things, and writing this down and asking people and sort of having a conversation and just saying, does this seem right, is an incredibly useful exercise in helping you understand the goals of the organization and helping the rest of the team. Now, it might be in your organization that you have a really nice set of KPIs, or OKRs are quite trendy these days, same thing. In which case you can just use that. That's a really good starting point. So I have some homework for you after this session. Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat. You guys are chatting away, which is great. Which is to take this and to actually fill it in for your organization. Now, we've got a link where you'll be able to get copies of the slides later on, or you can just put it together in a spreadsheet. But if you can't describe what the goals of your organization are, then you can't deliver those goals. And as I say, once you've written this down, you can actually take this to your leadership team and validate it. Say, look, is this correct? Or have I got this wrong, right? And at the end of the day, right, if we're going to maximize the egg, this is the definition of the egg, right? The contribution to these goals, our goal is to maximize our contribution to these goals, right? And that's what the egg should be. So the value, all the projects should be aligned to these goals. All of the work that you do should be aligned to this. The way that you run projects should be around maximizing the egg, not maximizing compliance with a process. The process might be important, right? I'm not saying it's not, but the process is there to deliver the egg. And so being super clear about what the egg is, what the goals of the organization are, is absolutely critical if you want to build a value-added PMO that your executives care about, right? One that's delivering value. Once you understand the goals, then you can ask a question: what services should we be offering? And I'm wearing a PMO hat for a second here, but what service should we be offering that'll help maximize the egg, right? So broadly, I categorize them as sort of portfolio management, project delivery, and center of excellence. So this is all the best practice, processes stuff, tools, all that kind of stuff lives over here. You can arrange these other ways. This is how I think about it, right? And so the question is, where's your focus today? Or more accurately, where should it be? And so here's a little bit of an interesting statement. So there's a bit of research done a year or two ago by an Australian researcher called Offa Zweifel. And he looked at what drives long-term project success, right? So by success, we mean it delivered the business benefit, right? It delivered the egg, not on time, not on budget. That's not how we're defining success anymore. Success is defined by it delivered the business benefit, right? Delivered value, which is an even better thing. And what was really interesting is that this piece, right? This is all just enablement, right? So this piece was critical, but only up to a certain point. You only had to be reasonably good at this to drive long-term success. You didn't have to be really good at it. And more importantly, what he found was that once you reached that threshold, doing project delivery stuff better, the templates, tools, and process stuff better, added no value at all, none at all. But what did drive value was all the stuff that goes on in portfolio management, because this is where you're focusing the portfolio and resources and driving decision making to support value, business value, the KPIs. So the message we should be taking away from this, I think, is that you have to have a base level of project delivery. For most projects, you don't really need PMP level skills, right? Many projects, you just need good, decent project management. I'm not saying you shouldn't do PMP, by the way, because it's a super credential. But most projects probably don't need all those PMP skills. But the portfolio management and the governance and the benefit realization work and all that kind of stuff, that's the piece that really drives value, really drives business outcomes. Okay, so that's the bit where if you want to be delivering value so that you're seen as valuable, I would focus your time there. The other thing that you can do if you want to be seen as valuable is sit down with the executives and ask them about what are the things that drive you mad, right? What's the pain that you have in strategy execution or project execution or however you want to talk to them about it. Now, we do a free workshop to help you with this, by the way, where we've got templates, so there's a checklist here that you can use to look for pain. And we've got a whole little workshop that we do to help turn that into a business case or a case for change to get support from your executives to boost your PMO performance. So if you want to have a go at that, scan this little guy, book a meeting, and we'll get you started. So this is a screenshot from the booklet that I use. So it's about asking them about their pain points. And then once you've got a list of their pain points, and it's things like lack of visibility. These are the big six, by the way. These are the ones that I hear most often, right? So they complain about a lack of visibility, budget and time, capacity planning, strategic alignment, risk management. So this is about actually delivering the benefit usually, and then data to support decision making. These are the ones that we hear again and again and again and again. And ultimately, it all boils down to the fact that we're just not getting the business benefits that we wanted, right? Hitting those business goals. And so once so this is their pain, right, that we're going to work on. So if we want to add value for the executives, we need to figure out how to fix this. And what I would recommend is don't go off and try and fix these things on their own. Take a little breath and look at the root cause of the pain. So for example, the project failure. So your projects are running over time, for example. Well, the assumption is that it's weak project management, right? Usually people will say, yeah, it's weak project management, more templates, more tools, more process. But actually, we just talked about the research. If you've got decent project management in place, that's probably good enough. So talk to project managers. Why are projects always late? Well, because task delivery is slow. The resources always deliver them late. So they must be idiots. So we go talk to them. And it turns out they're not idiots. They're just overloaded. right? So he's, the delivery resources are trying to deliver, they're being asked to deliver 13 things at the same time. And guess what? They can't deliver 13 things at the same time. So they're overloaded. So why are they overloaded? It's not because of resource management. Resource management doesn't fix a fundamental problem of project overload. It's because our portfolio management's broken. So if you want to fix this, you have to address that, right? Otherwise, someone's got a brain tumor and you're just giving them paracetamol to stop the headache, right? You've got to get in and you've got to take the tumor out if you want to help them. And so when you do this kind of root cause analysis on the big six, right? It's kind of a messy diagram, this, but these lines are all going. There are other causes as well, but there are three areas that stand out again and again and again as being kind of core in most organizations. So there's the demand and prioritization, the portfolio management bit, capacity planning. This is what drives velocity, and then project methodology stuff. But we've already established that, your exec doesn't really care about project and methodology stuff. That's ducks. That's your job. Just needs to fix it. So the bit we want to focus on with the execs is probably this bit up here. This is all the decision-making stuff. This is all the governance stuff that they care about. So let's go and look at some of that, right? Let's look at this area, just this box, and see what we can do. Remember, our goal here is to win the executives over by actually delivering more value, right? The first bit was about talking to them better. This bit's about what are the things we can do to really drive more value. And what we've discovered is this area feels like the area that the execs are going to get the most value from. So we start off with demand and prioritization. This is a fun number. This is a PMI number. In a typical portfolio, 20% of projects are so badly aligned with the goals of the organization that they should be stocked. I think we could call that waste. Whether you measure waste in inches or centimeters or tons, I don't care. It's still a lot of waste, right? In fact, let's put it into context. So if you're spending $10 million or 10 million euros, if you're investing 10 million euros in a project or in a portfolio of projects, this means that $2 million or euros of that is waste. Think about that number for a second. That's a lot. But it's worse than that, because remember, your execs actually care about the ROI. So let's say we're expecting a 3 times ROI on average across the portfolio. Well, that 2 million waste becomes 6 million euros of lost value. That's a huge impact. The portfolio is only a 10 million investment a year, and we're losing 6 million simply through misaligned projects. And these are only the ones that are so badly aligned they should be stopped. There's probably another 20% that are not well aligned, right? And we could do better. So how do we fix it? How do we do prioritization? The most common method for doing prioritization in the entire world is he who shouts loudest. Who's got the loudest voice? Who can stamp their feet and shout and say, yes, I want my project done? That's a terrible way to prioritize, but it's how most organizations do it. For some reason, people just assume, someone was chattering about Harvard Business School and MIT a little while ago in the chat, right? They assume because all these guys have been to business school and they've got the MBAs and they speak the language and they wear the shiny suit, that they have the answer to every question, and they don't. They're humans just like us. And so they have their biases just like us. They have their blind spots just like us. And then politics kicks in. And they've got politics that's not like ours generally, right? They've got divisional politics, budget politics. They're trying to build their empires. They're doing all kinds of things. They're thinking in silos, acting in silos. And he who shouts loudest just reinforces all of that behavior. And it's a terrible way to prioritize. If we want to get good strategic alignment and buy-in, right, which is, we need both of these for prioritization to work, by the way, you would imagine that using financial metrics is a good way to do it. Well, yes, it is. It's a bit better, but it misses out on a lot of that strategic stuff, the non-financial aspects of the business that are also important. So that's better than he who shouts loudest, but it's not great. Moscow, has anybody used Moscow? Just give me a wave if you've got your camera on. Let me know if you've used Moscow or heard of it. Yeah, we've got a few nodding head. Thomas is nodding away there. Oh, good to see you, Thomas. I didn't see you there. Right, Moscow. So if you're not familiar, it stands for must have, should have, could have, won't have. So it's about forcing people to decide and to basically create buckets of projects that are investments that they're going to make. Sounds great. It's quite good for buy-in. If you've done an MBA and you've heard Moscow, you feel like you're being grown up when you have Moscow on the whiteboard. But the problem is, how do you decide what is must have, what is should have, what's could have, and what's won't have? I'll tell you how most organizations figure that out. They use loudest voice, right? The executives argue about it. And so it's actually not solving the strategic alignment problem at all. So we're going to build a weighted scoring spreadsheet. Hurrah, that's good. That's going to help a bit with strategic alignment. Generally, the research suggests that they don't work very well unless, well, we'll keep the unless because I'll talk about that in a minute. But so these generally don't work terribly well for buy-in. They tend to trigger all kinds of politics and get abused. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. We could fill an hour with that. I'm not going to do that today. For now, just take my word for it that these generally, they can help with strategic alignment if you do a good job, but they generally deliver low buy-in from your executives. And don't forget, these are the techniques. These are the most commonly used techniques for prioritization today. That's what's giving us 20% waste. So empirically, they don't really work. Turns out there's a load of decision science research into what you should use. And you should be using this thing called AHP, Analytic Hierarchy Process, it's called. And it's specifically designed to drive both good strategic alignment and buy-in. I'm not going to talk a lot about AHP today, other than just to say it's there. I'll put up a QR code at the end. If you want to learn more about it, we have a whole guide on prioritization that you can go and look at, and it'll tell you all about AHP and how it works and everything else. So don't be lazy. Don't use this. Don't use these, right? It's worth it. There's $2 million of cost, $6 million of value that you're missing from your $10 million portfolio because you're not doing this well. Okay. So if you want to add value, that's a great way to add value. However, most problems in most portfolios, the bottleneck is not usually about money. Sometimes it is, but not usually. It's usually about people, about resources. So how do we fix that? So really quickly, this is based on queuing theory. So I try and base everything that I talk about on research into business and projects and strategy and all those kind of things. So this is built on queuing theory and wait times of tasks and all that kind of stuff, which is exactly what's going on within your project when you're trying to deliver stuff. And so this is your resource utilization rate and the amount of business value that gets delivered. If we do no projects, they're both low. So we had some projects, this is good. The more we're increasing our utilization rate, we're getting more business value. So now the exec says, hey, let's go for 100% utilization, right? Because you can't get better than 100% utilization. So you come all the way over here. Oh, look, something really weird's happening. We're not getting more value, we're getting less. The reason is that once you get to about 85% resource utilization, productivity drops. Theory of constraints, bingo. Well done, Enrico. Exactly that. This is key. This was a key input into the whole theory of constraints movement and Eli Goldblatt and all that kind of good stuff. And critical chain. We're going to come on to critical chain in a little minute as well. Um, so the idea is that once you get up here, you start to get conflict for your resources, and your productivity doesn't keep going up, it drops. The more weight, the more you overload your people, the less productive they are. And most organizations are, at or sometimes even above 100% allocation in their portfolio. So the execs will, typically what happens is the strategy guys get terribly excited. They say, yes, we'll do this project and this one and this one and this one and this one and this one. And then they throw it over the wall to the execution team and say, just do it, just find a way. And there is no way, right? You've overloaded the people. And that gap is more harmful. If you can fix that gap, you'll do more to improve the value delivery and the strategy execution of your organization than any other thing. So how do we fix it? Well, AHP helps. First of all, we get rid of the 20%, so we're on a higher hill. And now we've actually quantified the value, so we can start, and we can see when we get to that 80-85% level, if we overlay resource, and we can see how to put ourselves on top of the hill. And one of the things that we've done, and there's one other company I'm aware that does this as well, something similar anyway, is with AI now, not with ChatGPT type stuff, but it's with other sort of specialized algorithms, you can figure out how to put yourself on top of that hill. Okay, so if you want to see that, come join one of our demos and we'll show it to you. We do them every month. But by putting yourself on top of the hill, you're going to go faster and deliver more, right? And the American Psychology Association did some research that shows that when you're task switching, right, when you've got too much work, you're losing 40% of your capacity. So Enrico, this was this is really nice evidence for theory constraints thinking. So what we want to be able to do is build, if we start all of our projects on the same day, people are going to be overloaded, right? So it looks a bit like this. So day one, we say go. So we start project one, then we hop onto project two, then we hop onto project three, then back to project one, two, three, and then we throw it over to the next team, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and we keep going like this. And do you know what's really cool here, excuse me, is that you can now turn to your execs and say, hey guys, we've started all our projects, right? I'm working on your project, and the execs feel happy about that, but they shouldn't be. I'll show you why. Because when you do this, the first value you get is all the way over here, right? And that's a long time. And because we're task switching, we're hopping from task to task, we're trying to run 3 projects at the same time, we're losing that 40%. Okay, so that means we're delivering 40% fewer projects than we should be, right? Which means we're delivering less value than we should be. So what's the alternative? And this is Enrico's theory of constraints thing. The idea is that you want to stagger your projects so that your most constrained resource, which in this case are these light blue resources, right? That they are just constantly busy. They're not multitasking, they're single tasking, so they're productive, right? But we don't start this project until we're expecting these guys to come free. So at no point are we kind of multitasking, right? A really simple idea. 2 fabulous things happen when this works. First of all, you deliver your projects earlier. Do you remember earlier we asked that question? What would be the value of starting this project, finishing this project a month earlier? Right. Well, in most cases, there's quite a lot of value if you can deliver the project earlier. So we're delivering the projects earlier. But you remember we get that 40% capacity back as well, which means we've now got capacity to add 1 or 2 more projects for free. Right? We don't need more resources, we don't need more investment. We can just crack on and get this 1 or 2 more projects done and deliver more value. So if we're delivering more eggs, we're adding more value for the executive team. Right? Now the challenge is that building this is hard. So I hear people who say it takes a day or even 2 to come up with a resource. Because what you're trying to do is, if you imagine a Gantt chart kind of thing like this. And you're dragging and dropping your projects around and you're looking at your resource loading and you're trying to find which order should I put my projects in so I don't overload my people, right? That's basically, if you want to simplify theory, constraints, and critical chain, which is what Enrico was hinting at earlier, um, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to stagger your projects so that your resources are never overloaded. And that can be hard. It can take a day's work, 2 days work to get that done very often, which means it doesn't get done, not very often anyway. And that means that your plan's constantly out of date, which means your people are overloaded and your projects slow down, right? So this is a challenge, and again, this is something. There are a couple of companies now. There are a couple of technologies. Ours is one of them. Transparent Choice is one of them. But there are a couple of technologies out there now that have built specialized AI. This is not ChatGPT type stuff, but specialized AI that will optimize your roadmap for you and do it in a few seconds. Now that's really important, not because it saves you a day or two's time. It's important because you can do it when something changes. Things always change in project land. Your projects are bigger than you thought they were, or a key resource leaves or something, right? And when that happens, you need to be able to update this roadmap to keep your resources at their optimal delivery speed. Now, if you're imagining that this is all very good and very academic, Stuart, I was speaking to one of our partners last week, one of our consulting partners, a guy called Gregor Androjna in Slovenia. And he's just used these techniques with one of his customers and increased the project flow by 84%, 84%. Prasad, no, I do not. Consider Microsoft Copilot specialized AI. There are some algorithms so there's a product called Angin, and then our product are the two that I'm aware of that do this well. Transparent Choice and Angin, and neither of us use large language models or anything like that, or machine learning. It's not a machine learning problem, it's an optimization problem. That's a totally different class of AI. So no, it's not ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, any of those. So yes, this is real. 84% improvement. Gregor is a super guy, by the way. If you don't know him, go ping him out on LinkedIn. Tell him I said hi. He will love you. So obviously, there's a bunch of stuff here that, for most project organizations and PMOs, this requires a different way of working. Right? Thinking about resources, it's not just shout and get your project done. It's having a bit of discipline and process. It's not just start everything on day one. It's plan and have a bit of process. And when we do that, we're going to accelerate. We're going to give you more eggs, bigger eggs, and we're going to break fewer eggs on the journey, right? That's what this is about. And so very often what you need to do first is build what I call a case for change, which is really just the story that you're going to tell the executives to get their buy-in. It's just, it's change management for PMOs. We know about change management, right? We're project people. And the way I like to do that is I like to talk about the head, the heart, and the heartbreak. So the head is the financial case. We're going to give you, in the case of Gregor, 84% more projects, right? That's a big number. I'm not sure I'd commit to that one every time, but that's a big number. So that's all about the return on investment and so on. The heart, do you remember those pain points, that list of pain points you were going to, you can do the workshop and ask your execs, and it was things like visibility and all that stuff. That's all the heart stuff, because it's the stuff, if an executive doesn't have visibility, they feel like they're out of control, right? So you can help their heart, you can help them relax and feel better by giving them better visibility, for example. And then the heartbreak, this is where I like to tell a story about a project that went really, really, really badly wrong. Everything, the wheels fell off, people got fired, it was in the newspapers, right? Really painful. And then you talk about how, okay, if we change the way that we do that we're doing, you know, the prioritization, the portfolio management, and the way that we're managing projects, then that will never happen again, right? So between the head, the heart, and the heartbreak, you can build a really strong case for change for your executive. But remember, we're using their language, not our language. So we're talking about how we're going to accelerate their KPIs, not focus on time, on delivery, and all that stuff that we like, but it's about their KPIs. It's about their pain points, and it's about the problems that failed project had for them, right? Not about the project itself. And when you put all that together, again, if you want to really get the executive's attention, you know, if you could walk in and say, hey, I could double the strategic return on investment, look, we're using that ROI phrase again. If I could double your strategic ROI, right, would you love me? How much would you love me? Oh, I'd love you lots, Stuart, right? Yeah, of course they would. So think about it, right? If we can eliminate 20% waste, if we can get 20% more value by putting ourselves on top of the hill, can accelerate by 40%, we should be able to double the strategic ROI. Now you're mad. That's not possible. No one could possibly do that. Um, but it did. Oh, that wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting, oh, it's there, but it's disappeared. Look, can you see there? It's just disappeared. There's a case study. There it is. Case study. It's appeared now. So these guys did it. This is the American Planning Association, and they use some of these techniques. They worked with one of our consulting partners, PMO Strategies, Laura Barnard and her team, and they use these techniques. And when I asked Mike on the webinar, you know, did we boost your strategic ROI by, you know, did we double it? He's like, no, 150%. Right. So it wasn't just 100% improvement. It was like 150% improvement. So I'm not saying that everybody will hit that level, right? That would be a crazy claim to make, but it's absolutely possible to deliver that. And it's using these techniques. And you've got to believe that their executives love Mike and everything that he does, right? Which is the point of this session. So it's not just about how you communicate to them. That was the first half of the presentation. It's also about actually delivering the business value that they care about. So this is all the stuff we've done. So what I would suggest is if you scan this, you get to a little landing page. You can download the slides, and there should be a link to an ebook on benefits management, should be in the pack. So the other side of this, we've talked about the portfolio management piece. The other side of this is about benefit management. And so I recently published a book on that. It's a really thin one. It's about a 1 hour read. It's really quick. It's not meant to get you through a certification. It's not meant to compete with Steve Jenner's managing benefits or anything like that. It's meant to get you up to speed at a basic level quickly so you can do something. So there's an ebook on benefits, so you can get a free copy by clicking this QR code on the left, or if you want to do that case for change meeting, just grab time with me here, with me or the team. And of course, I know most of you are only here. You're not here for the talk. You're really here for the PDUs. So the PDU code's there as well. So feel free to grab that. So I'll leave that up there while we open up for questions. Caught everyone off guard. Any questions? Let me see. Where's Amir? So I have a question for Enrico. So Enrico, have you played with theory of constraints, and did it work for you? Because it's not often that people manage to get to theory of constraints before I've even got to the staggering piece. So I was quite impressed with that. Well done, Enrico. Yeah, fail to plan and plan to fail. And it's especially true at the portfolio level, funnily enough. And when you think focusing on benefits, there are some really simple things. One of the things that I find is really interesting over the last couple of years, I've spent more and more time looking at benefits management, portfolio management, strategy execution, and there's a whole body of research in those areas. And what I've learned is that they're all basically the same thing. So, so the book on benefits management, if I was writing a book on portfolio management, which I am at the minute, it would look a lot like the book on benefits management. And a book on strategy execution would look a lot like the book on benefits management and portfolio management. So again, today we focused on one aspect. We focused on those PMO services around portfolio that are the root cause of a lot of the failure modes of projects. But if you're interested in learning about the benefit realization side of this, which again is that's kind of the other side of delivering the egg, I would download the book. Excellent. Ah, yes, okay. It's interesting. It's really interesting. Agile in Theory of Constraints. There's a book. Do I have a copy here? Yes. Okay. I don't know if you can see it. Can anybody see this? If anyone's interested in this whole theory of constraints and how do you accelerate projects, I cannot recommend a book highly enough, more highly than this one. Can you all see that? I don't. Somebody give me a thumbs up. Is it?
Very well. Just if you
I'll
can
tell you what. Oh, let me stop sharing. Hang on. There we go. Right. So it's a book called The CIO's Guide to Breakthrough Project Portfolio Performance by Mike Hannon and a couple others, Wolfgang Muller. Some of you might know Wolfgang actually. Wolfram. It's not a thick book, but it talks about how to really accelerate portfolio delivery. I know Mike well, and we were talking about Gregor earlier and how he accelerated the project flow by 84%. Well, Mike's really disappointed if he accelerates the project flow by 100%. Right? His target is to get 300%, 400% flow, and he usually, he usually gets 200%, and sometimes well beyond that. So that's a really excellent book if you're interested in that theory of constraints, gold rat stuff. Putting it into and he kind of takes Agile and just goes off, takes it to a whole new level, like super Agile. Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. A quick question. Agile methodology. Well, do you know, that's a really interesting one. I sometimes struggle with Agile. So Agile at the portfolio level, I don't think we care what the delivery mechanism is, right? So all of that staggering and everything, in project land, you're staggering projects. In Agile, you're probably staggering epics or something, right? Whatever flavor of Agile it is that you're using. And Agile works really well so long as those teams, there aren't too many dependencies between teams. But as soon as you get dependencies between teams, Agile can get a little bit snarled up again because you suddenly, all those teams are trying to do everything at the same time. And there's a resource somewhere that all those teams are waiting on. And that guy's the one who's juggling 13 tasks all at once. So, so Agile is a really powerful and useful methodology for delivering projects, but you have to, in more complex portfolios, you have to just make sure you're taking care of the resources and do that staggering of your epics so that you don't overload those key resources. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but that's brilliant. Any other questions? How does one get to egg and enlarge it? Right. yes, so that's a really interesting question, EB. I'm not sure who EB is, but that's an interesting question about how do you get to a good strategy. So assuming that you're PMOs or PMs or program managers or something, it's not your job to come up with a strategy, but it can be your job to help clarify what the strategy actually is. And there's some research, by the way, that says that strategy execution and specifically strategic alignment of your investments with the strategy is far more important than what the strategy actually is. So if you execute a bad strategy well, you'll still do well. But if you have a great strategy and execute it badly, you'll fail, right? So the execution side is actually more important than the strategy side, first of all, or at least there's some evidence for that. And then the key thing is that prioritization process, because that's where you do the alignment. That's where you align the projects with the goals of the organization. And if you use AHP, the methodology I talked about, that's a really good way of getting your executives to have a very different kind of conversation so that they agree on what the strategy is before you try and cascade it into the portfolio. And when you do that, you get you end up with much better strategic alignment because you have much more clarity about what your strategy actually is. It's kind of obvious, right? So AHP works because it gets your executives aligned first and then moves into aligning the portfolio. There's a bunch of other things it does as well, but that's kind of the heart of it. So if you want to get that bigger egg, I would really look at the prioritization process and make it as good and strong as you can. Thank you, Vishal, for finding that book. That's brilliant. Oh, yes, Christopher. Okay. I think we're done. I think that's all the questions. Thank you, everybody. I'll say thank you again at the end. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Stuart, really, for this presentation. It was really interesting, and thank you in the name of our local group Darmstadt. I would kindly just ask all people if you can provide us feedback. You can go on menti.com and put this code that is shown on this slide, or just to scan QR code here. Just to answer, how do you feel now? The length of presentation is good for you. Will you recommend this event to others? Give a high five to the presenters, and the topic is very interesting, or such. And then I will share result of this feedback with all of you and with Stuart also. I need a few minutes to invite you to join our next event. We will have on 19th of May our online event, Shameless Project Marketing with Dirk Wittek. Then we will have a round table on 1st of June in Darmstadt. On 6th of June, we will have online event from Project Risk towards Uncertainty Management with Paul Kuipers. Then we will have one online event on 17th of June with Alexandros Simplis. On 2nd of July, also we will have online event, How Inflation Benefits Economic Growth and Prevents Deflation with James M. Beckpo. And on 16th of July, why we don't need project managers with Fola Alabi. And I would like also to invite you to join us to be a part of something bigger.
Amira, just jump back one if you could for a second.
Of course.
So I know Fola very well, and I can really recommend that session because she's going to blow the doors off. She's great. And Dirk's fabulous as well. I've heard that version of that talk. And if you are in PMO, so that line there will really dovetail well with this talk because it's all about that communication piece with executives. So there's some really good talks lined up here. Sorry to interrupt.
It is fine. It is fine. Thank you very much. All comments are welcome. And also, if you're interested for more events, you can find them on our PMI Germany chapter website. related to this, I would like, as I told, to invite you to be a part of local group Darmstadt or some other group that you can also find on the web that is provided on this slide. And at the end, thank you very much, Stuart, for sharing your presentation and for this event today. I hope we will have opportunity that you will be our speaker in future also. Thank you all for participating today, for engaging, for contributing, because it was really interesting, and I believe that the level of engagement of these people also is a result of success of this presentation. Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and if anyone don't have something else to add, that is the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody, for coming along.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you all.